The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound breaking the silence in room 314. Damon Williams stood frozen in the doorway, his designer suit wrinkled from the long flight from New York. His mother lay unconscious in the hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting her fragile body to machines that kept her alive. But it wasn't his mother's condition that made his blood run cold. Sitting in the chair beside the bed, holding his mother's hand with gentle care, was the woman he hadn't seen in 5 years. The woman who had disappeared from his life without a word. The woman who had broken his heart so completely that he'd thrown himself into building his business empire just to forget her. Keisha. She looked up at the sound of his sharp intake of breath. Her dark eyes, once filled with love and laughter, now held a mixture of pain and something else he couldn't identify. Fear maybe. Or guilt. Damon, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the medical equipment. I didn't know you were coming. He wanted to speak, to demand answers, to ask her why she was here, why she had vanished, why seeing her face made his chest feel like it was caving in. But the words stuck in his throat like concrete. Your mother, Keisha continued, her voice stronger now, she called me 3 days ago. Said she needed to see me. Said it was important. She paused, looking down at the woman who had once been like a second mother to her. She collapsed right after we talked. Damon's hands clenched into fists at his sides. You're lying. The words came out harsher than he intended. My mother wouldn't call you. She knows what you did to me. Keisha's face crumpled for just a moment before she composed herself. Damon, there are things you don't understand. Things I never got to explain. Explain? He stepped into the room, his voice rising despite the hospital setting. You disappeared, Keisha. One day you were there, talking about our future, making plans, and the next day you were gone. No note, no goodbye, nothing. What could you possibly explain that would make that okay? She stood up slowly, and for the first time he noticed how different she looked. Tired. Older. But still beautiful in a way that made his heart ache. She was wearing simple clothes, jeans and a sweater, nothing like the bright dresses she used to love. I had reasons, she said quietly. Good reasons. Like what? Like the man you left me for? The one you ran off with? Keisha's eyes flashed with something that looked like anger. There was no other man, Damon. There never was. Then why? The question burst out of him like a dam breaking. Why did you leave me? Why did you throw away everything we had? Before she could answer, the door opened and a nurse walked in. She was an older black woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Mr. Williams, she said, recognizing Damon immediately. I'm so sorry about your mother. She's stable for now, but we're monitoring her closely. What happened? Damon asked, grateful for the interruption even though he desperately needed answers from Keisha. She had a stroke, the nurse explained. A pretty severe one. She's been in and out of consciousness for the past 3 days. Sometimes she talks, but it's not always clear what she's trying to say. Damon nodded, trying to process the information while being hyper-aware of Keisha's presence beside him. She keeps asking for someone named Keisha, the nurse continued. And she keeps saying something about babies. We weren't sure what she meant. The blood drained from Damon's face. He turned to look at Keisha, who had gone completely still. Babies? He repeated slowly. Keisha's face had gone pale. I need some air, she said quickly, moving toward the door. No. Damon's voice was firm. You're not running away again. Not this time. Damon, please. What babies was my mother talking about, Keisha? The nurse looked between them, sensing the tension. I'll give you two some privacy, she said quietly, slipping out of the room. Keisha stood with her back to him, her shoulders shaking slightly. It's complicated. Then uncomplicated. She turned around and there were tears in her eyes. Your mother figured it out. I don't know how, but she did. She called me 3 days ago and said she knew about them. Said she wanted to see them. See who? But even as he asked the question, a terrible suspicion was growing in his mind. Our children, Damon. The words came out in a rush. Our triplets. The babies I was carrying when I left. The room seemed to spin around him. He grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself. What? I was pregnant when I left. With your children. 3 of them. That's impossible. But even as he said it, he was doing the math in his head. 5 years ago. Children would be 4 years old now. I found out 2 weeks before I left. I was scared, Damon. We were so young and you were just starting your business. Your family had such high expectations for you and I was just what? I was just the girl from the projects who cleaned houses with her mama. I wasn't good enough for the Williams family legacy. That's not true. But the words felt hollow because he remembered his father's comments, his aunt's whispered conversations about Keisha's background. Your father made it very clear what he thought of me. And when I found out I was pregnant, I knew he'd think I was trying to trap you. So I left. You should have told me. His voice cracked. You should have given me the choice. I was 19 years old and terrified. I made the best decision I could with what I knew then. Where are they? The question came out strangled. Where are my children? Keisha wiped her eyes. They're safe. They're with my sister. I want to see them. Damon. I want to see my children, Keisha. Now. She looked at him for a long moment, and he could see her internal struggle. Finally she nodded. Okay. But first let me check on your mother. She woke up yesterday asking for you. As if summoned by their conversation, Mrs. Williams stirred in her bed. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then landing on her son. Damon? Her voice was weak but clear. I'm here, Mama. He moved to her bedside, taking her hand. And Keisha? Her eyes searched the room until they found the younger woman. Good. You're both here. Mama, you need to rest. No time for rest. Mrs. Williams struggled to sit up slightly. I need to tell you something. About why I called Keisha. Damon felt Keisha tense beside him. I've been thinking about family, his mother continued. About what's really important. And I realized I made mistakes. We all did. What are you talking about, Mama? Mrs. Williams looked directly at Keisha. I'm talking about my grandchildren. The ones I never got to meet because we were too proud and too stubborn to see what was right in front of us. The heart monitor started beeping faster as Mrs. Williams became more agitated. Your father and I, we thought we knew what was best for you. But we were wrong. We let our pride cost us our family. Mama, calm down, Damon said, but she shook her head. I want to see them, she said firmly. I want to meet my grandchildren before it's too late. Keisha stepped forward. Mrs. Williams, you need to rest. We can talk about this later. No later. The older woman's grip on Damon's hand tightened. Promise me. Both of you. Promise me you'll bring them here. Damon looked at Keisha, seeing his own confusion and fear reflected in her eyes. I promise, Mama, he said quietly. Mrs. Williams smiled weakly and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep again. The silence in the room was deafening. Damon stared at his mother's peaceful face, trying to process everything that had happened in the last hour. He had children. 3 of them. And he'd never known. Their names? He said suddenly. What are their names? Keisha's voice was soft. Caleb, Aaliyah, and Zion. Tell me about them. She sat back down in the chair as if the weight of the truth was too much to bear standing up. Caleb is the oldest by 2 minutes. He looks just like you did at that age. He loves to build things, takes apart everything he can get his hands on. Aaliyah is our little artist. She draws pictures of everything and everyone. And Zion. She smiled for the first time since he'd walked in. Zion is our comedian. Always making his brother and sister laugh. Our? Damon repeated. You said our. They're your children too, Damon. I never wanted to keep them from you forever. I was just scared. He sat down heavily in the other chair. 5 years, Keisha. I've missed 5 years of their lives. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Damon spoke. I want to meet them. Today. Keisha nodded. Okay. But Damon, they don't know about you. I told them their father lived far away and couldn't come see them. What else was I supposed to think when you disappeared without a word? I know. I know I handled everything wrong. But I need you to understand that I did what I thought was best for them. For all of us. By keeping me away from my own children? By protecting them from a family that didn't want them. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Damon knew she was right about his family's initial reaction. His father had made his feelings about Keisha very clear. But things were different now. He was different now. That was a long time ago, he said. People change. Do they? Keisha asked. Because from where I'm sitting, you look at me the same way your father used to. Like I'm something that doesn't belong in your world. He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. Part of him was still angry, still hurt by her abandonment. But another part of him, the part that had loved her completely 5 years ago, just wanted to hold her and never let her go again. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I don't know how to be angry with you and grateful to you at the same time. You don't have to figure it out right now, she said gently. Right now, we just need to focus on your mother and the children. Will you take me to them? Today? She hesitated. Are you sure you're ready? Meeting them is going to change everything. Everything already changed the moment I walked into this room and saw you here. Keisha stood up. Let me call my sister and let her know we're coming. And Damon? Yeah. They're good kids. You're going to love them. As she walked out to make her phone call, Damon sat alone with his unconscious mother and the weight of everything he'd just learned. In the span of an hour, his entire world had been turned upside down. He was a father. He had 3 children who didn't know he existed. And the woman he'd never stopped loving, despite everything, was back in his life. He looked at his mother's peaceful face and whispered, "What do I do now, Mama? How do I fix something that's been broken for 5 years?" But Mrs. Williams slept on, leaving him alone with questions that had no easy answers and a future that was suddenly full of possibilities he'd never dared to imagine. The rental car felt smaller with Keisha sitting in the passenger seat. Damon gripped the steering wheel as they drove through the familiar streets of Atlanta, heading toward a part of town he hadn't been to in years. The silence between them was heavy, filled with 5 years of unspoken words and unanswered questions. "Turn left at the next light," Keisha said quietly, breaking the tension. Damon nodded, following her directions. They were heading to East Atlanta, to the apartment complex where Keisha's sister Nia lived, where his children lived. The thought made his stomach twist with a mixture of excitement and terror. "What did you tell Nia about me?" he asked, needing to fill the silence with something other than his racing thoughts. "The truth. That you didn't know about them. That I never gave you the chance to choose." "And what did she say?" Keisha let out a bitter laugh. "She said I was a fool. She's been saying that for 5 years. She was right. I know that now." Keisha's voice was barely above a whisper. "But you have to understand what it was like back then, Damon. Your father made it clear that I wasn't welcome in your family. Your mother was kind to me, but she never spoke up when he said those things. And then when I found out I was pregnant." "What things? What exactly did my father say to you?" Keisha stared out the window at the passing buildings. "He said I was using you. That girls like me always found ways to trap successful men. He said I was just another gold digger who would hold you back from your potential." Damon's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He remembered his father's opinions about Keisha, but he hadn't known about any direct confrontation. "When did this happen?" 2 weeks before I left. He came to the house where I was working. Told me he knew about us, about how serious we were getting. He offered me money to leave." "What?" Damon nearly swerved into the next lane. "He offered you money? $20,000. To disappear from your life and never contact you again. And you took it?" "No." Keisha turned to face him, her eyes flashing with anger. "I told him exactly what he could do with his money. But the conversation made me realize something. I realized that no matter how much you loved me, your family would always see me as beneath you. And when I found out I was pregnant, I knew they'd think the worst. So you ran. I protected my children from growing up in a family that didn't want them. They were my children too. You had no right to make that decision for me." "You're right." The admission seemed to cost her something. "I know you're right. But I was scared and alone and 19 years old. I thought I was doing the right thing." They drove in silence for a few more minutes before Keisha spoke again. "Turn here. It's the building on the right." Damon pulled into the parking lot of a modest apartment complex. The buildings were older but well-maintained, with small playgrounds scattered between them. He could see children playing outside, their laughter carrying on the afternoon breeze. "Are they out there?" he asked, scanning the playground. "No. Nia keeps them inside during the week unless she's with them. She's very protective." They sat in the car for a moment, neither one moving to get out. "What are they like?" Damon asked. "Really like, not just the basics." Keisha's face softened, and for the first time since he'd seen her in the hospital, she looked genuinely happy. "Caleb is serious like you were when you were focused on something. He builds these elaborate structures with blocks and gets upset if anyone knocks them down. He asks a million questions about how things work. Last week he took apart Nia's radio because he wanted to see the music." Despite everything, Damon found himself smiling. "Sounds familiar. Aaliyah is our dreamer. She draws pictures of places she wants to visit, people she wants to meet. She's convinced she's going to be an artist when she grows up and travel the world painting beautiful things. She's also the peacekeeper. When the boys fight, she's the one who finds a way to make them friends again." "And Zion?" "Zion is pure joy. He wakes up every morning like it's Christmas. He tells jokes that don't make sense but somehow make everyone laugh anyway. He's the first one to hug anyone who's sad and the last one to give up on anything he sets his mind to." "They sound amazing." "They are. They're everything good about you and hopefully some good things about me too. Damon looked at her profile as she watched the children playing outside. Why didn't you ever try to contact me? In 5 years, not once. I wanted to. So many times. Every birthday, every Christmas, every time one of them did something that reminded me of you. But I was afraid. Of what? Of you rejecting them. Of you being angry that I'd hidden them from you. Of your family treating them the way they treated me. My father died 3 years ago, Damon said quietly. Keisha turned to look at him, surprise and sympathy mixing in her expression. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Heart attack. Very sudden. He paused. He changed toward the end. Started talking about family differently. I think he regretted some of the things he'd done. That doesn't change what he said to me. No, it doesn't. But it might have changed how he felt about his grandchildren. They sat in silence again, both lost in thoughts of what might have been different. We should go up, Keisha said finally. Nia's waiting and the kids will be getting home from preschool soon. Preschool? Head Start program. They're getting ready for kindergarten next year. The reality of how much he'd missed hit him again. His children were starting school and he didn't even know their favorite colors. They got out of the car and walked toward the building. Keisha led him up 2 flights of stairs to apartment 2C. Before she could knock, the door opened. The woman standing there looked like an older, taller version of Keisha. She had the same warm brown skin and expressive eyes, but where Keisha looked tired and nervous, this woman looked ready for a fight. So you're him, she said, looking Damon up and down with obvious disapproval. Nia, Keisha warned. Be nice. Nice. Nia stepped back to let them in but kept her arms crossed. This man has 3 beautiful children he's never even asked about, and you want me to be nice? He didn't know about them, Keisha said quietly. Because you didn't tell him. That's on you, not him. Nia looked at Damon again. Though I notice he never came looking for you either. Nia, please. It's okay, Damon said. She's right to be protective of them. I would be too. This seemed to catch Nia off guard. She studied his face for a moment, then nodded slightly. They'll be home in about an hour, she said. Keisha told you they don't know about you? Yes. Good. Because we're going to do this right. No confusing them, no making promises you can't keep, no disrupting their lives unless you're serious about being in them. I'm serious. We'll see. Nia gestured toward the couch. Sit down. We need to talk. The apartment was small but comfortable, decorated with children's artwork and family photos. Damon found himself studying the pictures on the mantel, looking for glimpses of the children he'd never met. That one was taken last month, Nia said, noticing his attention. She pointed to a photo of 3 children at what looked like a zoo. Caleb's the one in the middle trying to look serious. Aaliyah's the one with the bright smile, and Zion's the one making bunny ears behind his brother's head. Damon picked up the photo, studying each face carefully. Caleb did look like him, with the same dark eyes and serious expression he remembered from his own childhood photos. Aaliyah had Keisha's smile and gentle eyes. And Zion looked like pure mischief, with a grin that seemed to light up the whole picture. They're beautiful, he said softly. They are. And they're happy. That's what matters most to me. Nia sat down across from him. So what's your plan here? You going to swoop in and play daddy for a few days and then disappear back to your fancy life? Nia, Keisha said from the kitchen where she was making coffee. No, it's a fair question, Damon said. And the honest answer is that I don't know what my plan is. I found out I had children 2 hours ago. I'm still trying to process that. But you want to be part of their lives? Yes, absolutely. Even though it won't be easy? Even though they might not understand why you weren't there before? Even though it means dealing with Keisha and all the history between you two? Damon looked at the photo again, then at Keisha, who was watching him anxiously from the doorway. Especially because of that, he said. Nia leaned back in her chair, studying him. Keisha says you're successful now. Rich. I've done well for myself. The kids don't need your money. We've managed just fine without it. I'm sure you have. But this isn't about money. What's it about then? Damon set the photo down carefully and looked directly at Nia. It's about the fact that I have 3 children who don't know I exist. It's about the fact that I've missed 5 years of their lives and I don't want to miss another day. It's about the fact that no matter what happened between Keisha and me, those kids deserve to have their father in their lives if he wants to be there. And you want to be there? More than I've ever wanted anything. Nia was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but we do this my way. Slow and careful. No big revelations today. Today you're just mommy's friend who came to visit. That's fine. And if you hurt them, any of them including Keisha, you'll have to deal with me. And I'm not as forgiving as my sister. Understood. Keisha came over with 3 cups of coffee, sitting down beside Damon on the couch. How do you want to handle this? She asked. Carefully, Nia said. They know you were visiting Mrs. Williams at the hospital. I told them you might bring a friend by to say hello. We'll see how they react to him, and if it goes well, maybe we can tell them more later. What if they ask questions? Damon asked. Kids always ask questions. The key is answering them honestly without overwhelming them with information they're not ready for. As if on cue, they heard footsteps in the hallway outside the apartment, followed by the sound of children's voices. That's them, Keisha said unnecessarily, her voice tight with nerves. Damon felt his heart start racing. In just a few seconds he was going to meet his children for the first time. Children who didn't know he was their father. Children who had lived their entire lives without him. The key turned in the lock and the door opened. Aunt Nia, we're home, a young voice called out. We're in the living room, Nia called back. 3 small figures appeared in the doorway, their faces bright with the excitement of children who had just gotten home from school. They saw the adults sitting in the living room and stopped, suddenly shy in the presence of a stranger. Hi babies, Keisha said, opening her arms. Come give mommy a hug. The children rushed to her, and Damon watched with wonder as his ex-girlfriend, the mother of his children, embraced the 3 most beautiful kids he'd ever seen. I want you to meet someone, Keisha said once the initial excitement had died down. This is my friend Damon. Damon, these are my children. Caleb, Aaliyah, and Zion. 3 pairs of eyes turned to look at him with the frank curiosity of childhood. Damon felt like his heart might burst out of his chest. Hi, he said, his voice rougher than he intended. Hi, Aaliyah said, stepping forward with a shy smile. Are you the friend who was at the hospital with mommy? Yes, I am. Is the nice lady going to be okay? This from Zion, who had climbed onto Keisha's lap. We hope so, Damon said. The doctors are taking very good care of her. Caleb, who had been studying Damon with serious eyes, suddenly stepped closer. You look familiar, he said. Do I know you from somewhere? Damon's breath caught in his throat. Beside him he felt Keisha tense. I don't think we've met before, Damon said carefully. But maybe I have one of those faces that looks like someone you know. Caleb continued to stare at him with those dark eyes that looked so much like his own. Maybe, he said finally. Can you build things? Some things. Why? I like to build things. Mommy says my daddy was good at building things too, but he lives far away. The words hit Damon like a physical blow. He looked at Keisha, who had tears in her eyes. Building things is fun, Damon managed to say. What kind of things do you like to build? And just like that, the ice was broken. Caleb launched into an enthusiastic description of his latest block creation, while Aaliyah shyly showed Damon a drawing she'd made at school, and Zion told him a joke that made absolutely no sense but was somehow hilarious anyway. As Damon sat in that small living room, listening to his children's voices and watching their faces light up as they talked, he felt something shifting inside his chest. This was what he'd been missing. This was what really mattered. But he also felt the weight of the secret he was carrying. These beautiful, brilliant children were his, and they had no idea. How long could they keep up this pretense? How long before the truth had to come out? And what would happen when it did? The next 2 weeks fell into an unexpected routine. Damon found himself driving to Atlanta every few days, officially to check on his mother's progress, but really to spend time with the children. Mrs. Williams remained stable but unconscious most of the time, and during her brief moments of wakefulness, she kept asking about the babies. Today, Damon sat on the floor of Nia's living room, helping Caleb build an elaborate castle out of blocks while Aaliyah drew pictures at the kitchen table and Zion told stories to anyone who would listen. This tower needs to be taller, Caleb said seriously, adding another block to the structure. Castles always have tall towers. You're right, Damon agreed, marveling at the boy's attention to detail. How do you know so much about castles? Mommy reads us books about knights and princesses. I like the parts about building the castles. Aaliyah likes the princesses and Zion likes the dragons. Dragons are funny, Zion chimed in from where he was playing with toy cars. They go roar. He demonstrated with impressive volume. Inside voice, baby, Keisha called from the kitchen where she and Nia were preparing dinner. Over the past 2 weeks, Damon had learned so much about his children. Caleb was indeed the serious one, methodical and thoughtful in everything he did. He liked to understand how things worked and got frustrated when adults couldn't explain something to his satisfaction. He was also fiercely protective of his siblings, always making sure they were included in games and activities. Aaliyah was the artist and the dreamer. She saw beauty in everything and had an endless supply of questions about the world beyond their neighborhood. She'd taken to Damon immediately, always eager to show him her latest drawing or ask him about places he'd traveled for business. And Zion was pure joy wrapped in a 4-year-old body. He found something to laugh about in every situation and had the remarkable ability to make everyone around him smile. He'd started calling Damon Mr. D, and had appointed himself as the official entertainment committee. Mr. D, Aaliyah called from the table. Can you come see my picture? Damon carefully moved away from the block castle, earning a tolerant sigh from Caleb, and went to the kitchen table. Aaliyah had drawn a picture of several stick figures holding hands in front of a large building. That's beautiful, sweetheart. Tell me about it. It's our family, she said proudly. That's me and that's Caleb and that's Zion and that's Mommy and that's Aunt Nia. It's wonderful. You're a very talented artist. Aaliyah beamed at the praise, then looked at her drawing thoughtfully. I want to add someone else, but I don't know how to draw them. Who do you want to add? My daddy. Mommy says he lives far away, but I think he should be in the family picture too. Damon felt his heart stop. From the kitchen, he could hear the conversation between Keisha and Nia pause. What do you think your daddy looks like? He asked carefully. Aaliyah studied his face with the serious consideration that only children possess. I think he looks kind. Like you. You have kind eyes. Aaliyah, Keisha said, coming over to the table. Why don't you show Mr. Damon the picture you drew of the zoo? But Aaliyah wasn't ready to change subjects. Mommy, why doesn't our daddy come to see us? Keisha knelt down beside her daughter's chair. Remember what we talked about, baby? Daddy lives very far away, and sometimes grown-ups have complicated situations that make it hard for them to visit. But he could call us, or send letters, or emails like Grandma Rose does. Damon watched Keisha struggle with the question, seeing the pain in her eyes as she tried to explain a situation that was far too complex for a 4-year-old to understand. Sometimes, Damon said quietly, daddies don't know how to find their children. Sometimes they want to see them very much, but they don't know where they are. Aaliyah looked at him with those serious eyes. That's sad. Yes, it is. If I was a daddy and I couldn't find my children, I would look everywhere until I found them. I think you would. And I think any children who had you for a daddy would be very lucky. From across the room, Caleb looked up from his blocks. Mr. D, do you have any children? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Damon felt all the adults in the room tense. That's a very personal question, Caleb, Nia said quickly. It's okay, Damon said. He looked at the boy who looked so much like himself and made a decision that he hoped he wouldn't regret. I recently found out that I do have children. 3 of them, actually. Really? Zion bounced over, always eager for new information. Are they nice? Do they like to play? I think they're the most wonderful children in the world, Damon said, looking directly at Keisha. But they don't know me very well yet. Why not? Caleb asked, abandoning his blocks completely now. Because I didn't know about them for a long time. Their mommy lived far away and we lost touch with each other. That's like our daddy? Aaliyah exclaimed. Maybe you can help each other find your families. Maybe we can, Damon agreed. What are their names? Zion wanted to know. Damon smiled, feeling tears prick at his eyes. Their names are Caleb, Aaliyah, and Zion. The 3 children stared at him in confusion for a moment. Then Caleb's eyes went wide. Those are our names, he said slowly. Yes, they are. But that means... Aaliyah's voice trailed off as she tried to work out the logic. That means you're our daddy? Zion finished, his 4-year-old mind making the leap faster than his siblings. The room went completely silent. Keisha had gone pale, and Nia looked ready to intervene if things went badly. Yes, Damon said quietly. I'm your daddy. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Zion launched himself at Damon with a whoop of joy, wrapping his small arms around Damon's neck in a hug that nearly knocked him over. I knew it. Zion shouted. I knew you were somebody special. Aaliyah was slower to react, looking back and forth between Damon and her mother. Mommy? Is it true? Keisha knelt down and pulled her daughter close. Yes, baby. It's true. Mr. Damon is your daddy. Aaliyah looked at Damon with wonder in her eyes. You're really our daddy? The one I wanted to put in my picture? Yes, sweetheart. I'm really your daddy. She slipped off her chair and walked over to him slowly, studying his face as if seeing it for the first time. You do look like Caleb, she said finally. Then she smiled that beautiful smile that was so much like her mother's. Can I hug you too? Damon opened his other arm, and Aaliyah stepped into it, letting him hold both her and Zion. Over their heads, he looked at Caleb, who was still standing by the block castle, his expression unreadable. "Caleb," Keisha said gently. "What are you thinking, baby?" The boy looked at his mother, then at Damon, then back at his mother. "You said he lived far away." "He did live far away," Keisha said. "And I should have told you the truth sooner. I'm sorry about that." "Why didn't you come to see us before?" Caleb asked Damon directly. It was the question Damon had been dreading, but he knew he owed his son honesty. "Because I didn't know you existed. Your mommy didn't tell me about you when you were born." "Why not?" Damon looked at Keisha, who nodded encouragingly. "Because we had some grown-up problems that we didn't handle very well. Your mommy was trying to protect you." "From what?" "From people who might not have been kind to you. Your mommy wanted to make sure you were safe and happy." Caleb considered this for a long moment. "But you're here now." "Yes, I am. And I want to be here for you if you'll let me." "Are you going to leave again?" The question hit Damon right in the chest. "No, son. I'm never going to leave you again. Not unless you want me to." Caleb studied his face for another long moment, then walked over slowly. "Can I hug you too?" "I would love that more than anything." Caleb joined the group hug, and Damon felt like his heart might explode from happiness. These were his children. His beautiful, perfect children, and they were in his arms. "This is the best day ever," Zion announced, his voice muffled against Damon's shoulder. "For me too, buddy. For me too." After the children had gone to bed that night, the adults sat around the kitchen table with cups of coffee that had long since grown cold. "That went better than I expected," Nia admitted. "I thought Caleb might be angrier." "He's still processing," Keisha said. "He'll have more questions tomorrow." "What happens now?" Damon asked. "I mean, what's the plan going forward?" "That depends on what you want," Keisha said. "And what's best for the kids. I want to be their father. Really be their father, not just someone who visits occasionally." "That's a big commitment," Nia pointed out. "It's not just fun and games. It's homework and discipline and doctor's appointments and sleepless nights when they're sick." "I know. I want all of it." "Even if it means dealing with me?" Keisha asked quietly. "Because we're going to have to find a way to co-parent, and that means working through our own issues." Damon looked at her across the table, this woman who had broken his heart and given him the most precious gifts he could imagine. "Especially if it means dealing with you. What about your business? Your life in New York?" "I can work from anywhere. And my life in New York doesn't mean much without them in it." "You're talking about moving here?" "I'm talking about whatever it takes to be close to my children." Keisha was quiet for a long moment. "There's something else you need to know. About why I really left." "What?" She took a deep breath. "I was scared, yes. But I was also sick. Really sick. The pregnancy was complicated and I had some health issues that made everything harder. I was hospitalized for a month before the babies were born." "Why didn't you call me?" "Because your father had just told me I wasn't good enough for your family. Because I was 19 and terrified and convinced that if I told you about the babies, you'd feel trapped. Because I thought I might die and leave you with 3 babies and no idea how to take care of them." Damon stared at her. "Die." "I had preeclampsia. Severe preeclampsia. The doctors weren't sure if I would make it through the delivery. But you did." "Barely. I was in the ICU for 2 weeks after the babies were born. Nia took care of them while I recovered. I should have been there. I know that now. But at the time, all I could think about was protecting you from having to choose between me and your family. There wouldn't have been a choice. Would have been you. It would have always been you." Tears started rolling down Keisha's cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Damon. I'm so sorry I kept them from you. I'm sorry I made such a mess of everything." "We both made mistakes," he said gently. "But we have a chance to fix them now." "Do we?" "Because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let someone else help me raise them when I've been doing it alone for so long." "You haven't been alone," Nia pointed out. "I've been here." "That's different. Your family." "So is he," Nia said, nodding toward Damon. "Whether you two can figure out how to be together or not, he's the father of those children. That makes him family." They talked until nearly midnight, working out practical details and trying to figure out how to blend their lives together for the sake of the children. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in 5 years, Damon felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Damon spent every waking moment with the children, making up for lost time and trying to learn everything he could about their personalities, their preferences, their fears and dreams. He discovered that Caleb loved science experiments and could spend hours testing different ways to make paper airplanes fly farther. Aaliyah was fascinated by different cultures and countries, constantly asking about places she'd seen in books or on TV. And Zion had an impressive memory for songs and stories, able to recite entire books word for word after hearing them just a few times. But it was the small moments that meant the most to Damon. Aaliyah falling asleep against his shoulder while he read to her. Zion insisting that Damon push him on the swings at the playground. Caleb quietly slipping his hand into Damon's while they walked to get ice cream. "They love you," Keisha said one evening as they watched the children play in the courtyard of the apartment complex. "I love them too. More than I knew was possible. It's different when they're yours, isn't it?" "Yeah, it is." He paused. "Keisha, I've been thinking about what you said. About being scared and alone when you were pregnant. What about it? I understand why you made the choices you did. I don't agree with them, but I understand them. Thank you for saying that. But I need you to understand something too. I would have chosen you. Every time, in every situation, I would have chosen you and our children over everything else. I know that now. Do you? Because sometimes I look at you and I see the same fear in your eyes that you had 5 years ago. Like you're waiting for me to disappoint you." Keisha was quiet for a long moment, watching Aaliyah show Zion how to do a cartwheel. "It's hard to trust when you've been hurt." "I never hurt you, Keisha. You hurt me. I know. And I hate myself for it. I don't want you to hate yourself. I want you to trust me. I want us to find a way to be a family, even if it's not the kind of family we originally planned." "What kind of family did you have in mind?" Damon looked at her profile, remembering the girl he'd fallen in love with all those years ago. She was still beautiful, still the same person who had captured his heart completely. But they were both different now, shaped by years of separation and the responsibility of raising children. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I know I want us to figure it out together." 3 days later, Damon got the call he'd been dreading. His mother had taken a turn for the worse and was asking for him. When he arrived at the hospital with Keisha and the children, Mrs. Williams was awake but visibly weaker than she'd been. "There they are," she said softly when she saw the children. "My beautiful grandchildren." Caleb, Aaliyah, and Zion approached the hospital bed cautiously. They'd been told that the nice lady was very sick, and they weren't sure what to expect. "Hello, sweethearts," Mrs. Williams said. "I'm your grandmother. Your daddy's mama. Are you going to get better?" Aaliyah asked with the directness of childhood. "I don't know, baby. But I'm so happy I got to meet you." "We brought you pictures," Zion announced, pulling a handful of drawings from his pocket. "Aaliyah made them, but they're from all of us." Mrs. Williams looked at the drawings with tears in her eyes. "They're beautiful. Thank you." She spent the next hour talking with the children, asking about their favorite things and telling them stories about their father when he was their age. Damon watched in amazement as his mother transformed from the stern woman he'd known growing up into a warm, loving grandmother. "I need to talk to the grown-ups for a minute," she said finally. "Can you 3 sit in those chairs by the window and look at the birds outside?" The children obediently moved to the chairs, chattering quietly among themselves. "Damon," Mrs. Williams said, her voice weaker now. "Come here." He moved closer to the bed, taking her hand. "I was wrong," she said simply. "About everything. About Keisha, about what was important, about what makes a family." "Mama, you don't need to." "Yes, I do. I let my pride and my fear keep me from seeing what was right in front of me. Keisha is a good woman, and those children are a blessing. Don't make the same mistakes I did." "I won't." "And Keisha," Mrs. Williams turned to the younger woman. "I'm sorry. I should have stood up to my husband. I should have made you feel welcome in our family." "Mrs. Williams, you were just a girl trying to do the right thing for your babies. I understand that now." She paused, breathing heavily. "Take care of each other. All of you. Family is everything." That night, Mrs. Williams passed away peacefully in her sleep. The funeral was small but meaningful, with Keisha and the children standing beside Damon as he said goodbye to his mother. "She was happy at the end," Keisha said as they drove home from the cemetery. "She got to meet her grandchildren and know that you were going to be okay." "I think she was ready to let go," Damon agreed. "She'd been holding on, waiting for something. I think that something was them." In the back seat, the children were unusually quiet, processing their first real experience with loss. "Daddy?" Aaliyah said finally. "Is Grandma still our family even though she's not here anymore?" "Yes, sweetheart. She'll always be our family. And she'll always love you no matter where she is. Good, Zion said firmly. Because I liked her. She told funny stories about when you were little. Damon smiled through his tears. She did, didn't she? As they pulled into the parking lot of the apartment complex, Caleb spoke up for the first time. Daddy, are you going to go away now? Back to New York? No, son. I'm staying right here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. That night, after the children were asleep, Damon sat with Keisha on the small balcony of Nia's apartment. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure out how to be a family. A real family. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I. But we'll figure it out together. What if we can't? What if too much has happened for us to find our way back to each other? Damon took her hand, marveling at how right it felt to touch her again. Then we'll find a new way forward. For them. And for us. He looked at her in the moonlight, this woman who had given him everything and broken his heart and somehow made him whole again all at the same time. Especially for us. 6 months later, Damon stood in the kitchen of his new house, making breakfast for 4. The house was in a good neighborhood with excellent schools, just 10 minutes from Nia's apartment. It had taken some convincing to get Keisha to agree to move in with him, but eventually they'd worked out an arrangement that felt right for everyone. They weren't married. They weren't even officially together in the romantic sense. But they were a family and they were figuring out how to make it work day by day. Daddy, the pancakes are burning, Caleb pointed out from his seat at the kitchen table. Thank you, Mr. Observant, Damon said, flipping the pancakes quickly. How did you get so smart? Good genes, Caleb said seriously, making Keisha laugh from where she was packing lunches. And modest too, she teased. Modesty is overrated, Aaliyah announced, bouncing into the kitchen in her school uniform. I'm going to be the most famous artist in the world and everybody will know my name. That's the spirit, Damon said, ruffling her hair as she climbed into her chair. What about you, Zion? Keisha asked as the youngest member of their family made his entrance. What are you going to be when you grow up? Happy, Zion said without hesitation. I'm going to be happy and make other people happy too. The adults exchanged glances over his head. Out of the mouths of babes. That's a very good goal, Damon said. Probably the most important one. After breakfast, they walked the children to the bus stop. It was a routine they'd established, all of them together in the morning, sending the kids off to school with hugs and kisses and reminders to be good. I have a meeting with my publisher this afternoon, Keisha said as they walked back to the house. How's the book coming? Better than I expected. Turns out I had more to say about resilience and second chances than I thought. Keisha had started writing 6 months ago, encouraged by a therapist they'd been seeing to help them navigate their complicated situation. What had started as journaling had turned into something more, and now she had a book deal to write about single motherhood, forgiveness, and finding your way back to the people you love. I'm proud of you, Damon said and meant it. For writing a book? For everything. For being brave enough to tell your story. For being willing to let me back into your life. For raising 3 incredible kids mostly on your own. I didn't do it alone. Nia helped. Nia helped, but you were there constant. You were there everything. That's not easy. They'd had this conversation before, but Damon felt it was important to acknowledge what she'd accomplished. In the months since he'd been back in their lives, he'd come to understand just how much Keisha had sacrificed to give their children a stable, loving home. What are your plans for today? She asked, changing the subject in the way she always did when praise made her uncomfortable. I have a conference call with the investors at 10, then I thought I'd surprise the kids by picking them up from school. Maybe take them to that new trampoline place they've been talking about. They'll love that. But don't let Zion bounce too much right before dinner. Last time you did that, he threw up on the kitchen floor. Noted, Damon said, grinning. Any other parenting wisdom for me? You're doing fine. Better than fine, actually. They adore you. The feeling is mutual. They'd reached the house, and as they walked up the front steps, Keisha paused. Damon, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever regret it? Coming back here, turning your life upside down for us? He looked at her in surprise. Never. Not for a single second. Why would you ask that? Because you gave up a lot. Your life in New York, your routine, your freedom. You went from being a successful bachelor to being a full-time father overnight. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Even when Zion had that stomach bug last month and threw up on you 3 times in one night? Especially then. Even when Aaliyah went through that phase where she only wanted to wear her princess costume and you had to explain to her teacher why she was dressed like Elsa for picture day? Even then. Even when Caleb took apart your laptop because he wanted to see how the internet worked? Okay, that one tested my patience a little, Damon admitted. But even then. Keisha smiled, but there was something wistful in her expression. I just want to make sure you're not going to wake up one day and realize this isn't what you wanted. Keisha, look at me. She met his eyes reluctantly. This is exactly what I wanted. Maybe not the way I imagined it would happen, but this, you, the kids, this life we're building together, this is everything I never knew I needed. What about the other stuff? Dating, romance, eventually getting married and having more kids. The question hung between them, heavy with implication. They'd been dancing around the topic for months, both of them afraid to acknowledge the feelings that had never really gone away. What about it? Don't you want those things? I want them with you. The words were out before he could stop them, honest and vulnerable and terrifying. Keisha stared at him. Damon. I know we agreed to take things slow. I know we're still figuring out how to be co-parents and friends. But I can't pretend I don't still love you, Keisha. I never stopped loving you. This is complicated. Everything worthwhile is complicated. What if it doesn't work? What if we try to be together and we just end up hurting each other again? What does that do to the kids? What if it does work? What if we stop being afraid and start trusting each other? What does that give the kids? She was quiet for a long moment, and Damon could see her internal struggle playing out across her face. I love you too, she said finally. I never stopped either. But I'm terrified of messing this up. So we don't mess it up. It's not that simple. Isn't it? We love each other. We love our children. We want to be a family. Why does it have to be more complicated than that? Because real life is complicated. Because we have history. Because... He stepped closer, close enough to touch her face. Because you're scared. Yes, I'm scared. What are you scared of? I'm scared that you'll realize I'm not enough. That the girl you fell in love with was just a fantasy, and the reality of me, the reality of our life, won't be what you expected. Keisha, you're everything. You always were. I'm a single mother with stretch marks and trust issues who's been out of the dating game for 5 years. I don't know how to be anyone's girlfriend anymore. You don't have to be anyone's girlfriend. You just have to be you. What if that's not enough? It's everything. Before she could protest again, he kissed her. Softly at first, then deeper when she didn't pull away. It was their first real kiss in over 5 years and it felt like coming home. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. We can't do this on the front porch, Keisha said, but she was smiling. Why not? It's our front porch. The neighbors will talk. Let them talk. You're impossible. I'm in love with you. Damon. Marry me. The words surprised both of them. Keisha's eyes went wide. What? Marry me. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. When you're ready. When we're both ready. Marry me and let's stop pretending we're not meant to be together. You're proposing to me on our front porch at 9 in the morning on a Tuesday? I'm telling you that I want to spend the rest of my life with you and our children. The timing and location are just details. Keisha stared at him for a long moment, then started laughing. You're insane. Insanely in love with you. That was terrible. But accurate. She shook her head, still laughing. I can't believe you just proposed to me. I can't believe it took me this long. We haven't even been on a proper date yet. Then let's go on one. Tonight. Nia can watch the kids and we can go somewhere nice and have a real conversation about what we both want. And if I say no to the proposal? Then I'll ask you again tomorrow. And the day after that. And every day until you say yes. That's harassment. That's persistence. There's a fine line between the two. Keisha, I'm serious. I know we have things to work through. I know we need to rebuild trust and figure out how to be partners again. But I also know that what we have is worth fighting for. Those kids in there deserve to see their parents happy and in love. They deserve to grow up in a house full of laughter and joy and security. And you think marrying me will give them that? I think loving each other will give them that. The marriage is just the paperwork. Keisha looked at the house behind them, then back at Damon. What if I need time to think about it? Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. I promise. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him again, soft and sweet and full of possibility. Ask me again in 6 months. Deal. And Damon? Yeah. For the record, when you do ask me again, the answer is going to be yes. That afternoon, Damon picked up the children from school as planned. Their faces lit up when they saw him waiting by the pickup area, and they ran to him with the enthusiasm of kids who knew they were about to have an adventure. Surprise? he said, scooping Zion up in his arms. Who wants to go jump on trampolines? Me, all three of them shouted at once. As they drove to the trampoline park, Aaliyah chatted about her art class, Caleb described a science experiment they'd done, and Zion sang a song he'd learned about different types of weather. It was normal, everyday family chaos, and Damon loved every minute of it. Daddy, Caleb said during a break in the conversation, are you and Mommy going to get married? The question caught Damon off guard. Why do you ask? Because Jeremy's parents got divorced and now his dad lives in a different house. But his mom's boyfriend is really nice, and Jeremy thinks they might get married. And Marcus in my class says his mom and dad got married last year and it was the best party ever, Aaliyah added. There was dancing and cake and everything. I like cake, Zion contributed helpfully. What do you three think about marriage? Damon asked, curious about their perspective. I think it means people promise to love each other forever, Aaliyah said seriously. Like in the fairy tales. I think it means they live in the same house and take care of each other, Caleb added. Which we already do, so I don't see what the big deal is. I think it means there's cake, Zion said, making them all laugh. Those are all good answers, Damon said. But what would you think if Mommy and I did decide to get married someday? Would we still live in our house? Caleb asked. Yes. Would you still be our daddy? Aaliyah wanted to know. Always. Would there be cake? Zion asked hopefully. Definitely cake. Then I think it would be good, Caleb decided. You make Mommy smile more than she used to. And you make us feel safe, Aaliyah added. Like we don't have to worry about things anymore. And you're funny, Zion said. You tell good jokes and you're not afraid of the monster under my bed. There's no monster under your bed, buddy. I know. But it's nice that you checked anyway. That evening, after the children were asleep, Damon and Keisha sat in the living room going through photo albums. Keisha had brought boxes of pictures from her apartment, and they were working on creating a family album that included all their memories, old and new. Look at this one, Keisha said, showing him a picture of the three kids on their first day of preschool. Caleb was so nervous he threw up that morning. And now he's the one who reminds everyone else to be brave, Damon observed. They've grown up so much this year. We all have. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, occasionally sharing stories about the pictures they were looking at. It was peaceful, domestic, everything Damon had dreamed of during those lonely years in New York. Damon, Keisha said suddenly, I've been thinking about what you said this morning. About the proposal? About all of it. About us, about the future, about what we want. And I realized something. I've been so focused on protecting myself from getting hurt again that I forgot to pay attention to what I actually want. What do you want? I want this, she said, gesturing around the room. I want our family. I want to wake up next to you every morning and go to sleep in your arms every night. I want to fight about whose turn it is to do the dishes and make up by kissing in the kitchen. I want to grow old with you and watch our grandchildren play in this same living room someday. Keisha, I want to marry you, Damon. Not in 6 months, not when I'm less scared, but soon. Because life is short and uncertain, and I don't want to waste any more time being afraid of happiness. He set down the photo album and pulled her into his arms. Are you sure? I'm sure. I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm tired of pretending that's not enough. It's everything. So ask me again. Now. Right now. Damon got down on one knee right there in their living room, surrounded by pictures of their children and the life they'd built together. Keisha, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and my partner and my best friend for the rest of our lives? Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, yes, yes. He kissed her then, sealing the promise with all the love and hope and faith they'd found in each other again. From upstairs came the sound of small feet on the floor, followed by whispered voices. Do you think they heard us? Keisha asked. Probably. Should we go check on them? In a minute. Let's just sit here for a second and appreciate this moment. What moment? The moment when everything changed. When we stopped being afraid and started believing in our future. I love you, future Mrs. Williams. I love you too, Mr. Williams. And as they sat there in their living room, holding each other and planning their future, 3 little faces peered around the corner from the stairway, grinning from ear to ear. Told you there was going to be cake, Zion whispered to his siblings. The best kind, Aaliyah whispered back. Wedding cake. 1 year later, Damon stood at the altar of the small church where his mother had worshipped for 30 years. The sanctuary was decorated with white roses and soft candlelight, and filled with everyone who mattered most to them. Nia sat in the front row with tears streaming down her face, flanked by 3 beautifully dressed children who could barely contain their excitement. The music began, and Damon's breath caught in his throat as the doors at the back of the church opened. There was Keisha, radiant in a simple white dress that made her look like an angel. But she wasn't walking alone. Caleb was on her right side, serious and proud in his little tuxedo. Aaliyah was on her left, beaming and carrying a bouquet of pink roses. And Zion was in front of them all, carefully scattering flower petals and grinning like he was having the time of his life. They walked down the aisle as a family the way they'd planned. Because this wasn't just about Damon and Keisha getting married. It was about all of them making a commitment to each other, to the family they'd become and the future they were building together. When they reached the altar, the children took their places beside their parents. The pastor, who had known Mrs. Williams for decades, smiled warmly at all of them. "Dearly beloved," he began, "we are gathered here today not just to witness the union of Damon and Keisha, but to celebrate the formation of a family that has already proven that love conquers all obstacles." The ceremony was simple but meaningful. They'd written their own vows, and when it came time to speak them, Damon looked directly into Keisha's eyes. "Keisha, 5 years ago I thought I'd lost you forever. I thought our love story was over before it really began. But I've learned that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most broken places. You gave me the greatest gifts I could ever imagine. Our children, our family, our second chance. I promise to love you fiercely and faithfully for the rest of my life. I promise to be the husband you deserve and the father our children need. I promise to never let fear or pride keep us apart again." Keisha was crying openly now, but her voice was steady when she spoke her vows. "Damon, I spent 5 years thinking I was protecting you from making a mistake by choosing me. But I was wrong. Love isn't a mistake, it's a miracle. And our children are proof that miracles can come from the messiest, most complicated situations. I promise to trust you with my heart even when I'm scared. I promise to be your partner in everything, the good times and the hard times. I promise to love you and our children with everything I have, for all the days of my life." When it came time for the rings, Caleb stepped forward with the solemn responsibility of the ring bearer. But as he handed over the rings, he whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Don't forget to kiss her, Daddy. That's the best part." The congregation erupted in laughter, and even the pastor couldn't keep a straight face. "I don't think he'll forget," the pastor said with a chuckle. "But just to be safe, Damon, you may kiss your bride." And he did, thoroughly and completely, while their children cheered and the congregation applauded. "Ladies and gentlemen," the pastor announced, "I present to you the Williams family." The reception was held in the church fellowship hall, decorated with more flowers and twinkling lights. There was dancing and laughter and, as promised, an enormous cake that Zion kept eyeing with barely contained anticipation. "Can we eat the cake now?" he asked for the 10th time in half an hour. "Soon, buddy," Damon promised, ruffling his son's hair. "Let's take some pictures first." They posed for what felt like hundreds of photos. The whole family, just the bride and groom, the children with their parents, silly faces and serious poses. Through it all, Damon kept thinking about how different this day might have been if Mrs. Williams had lived to see it. As if reading his thoughts, Nia appeared beside him during a quiet moment. "She would have loved this," she said simply. "You think so?" "I know so. She called me, the day before she died." "She did. She said she'd been wrong about everything, and she was grateful that Keisha had raised such wonderful children. She said she hoped you two would find your way back to each other. I wish she could have been here." "Who says she isn't?" Nia nodded toward the children, who were now teaching their new cousin how to do the electric slide. "Look at them. Look at the joy on their faces. That's her legacy. That's what she would have wanted most." Damon felt tears prick his eyes as he watched his children laughing and dancing, completely secure in the love that surrounded them. This was what family was supposed to look like. This was what his mother had tried to tell him in those final days in the hospital. "Uncle Damon," called out Marcus, Nia's 8-year-old son. "Come dance with us." "Yeah, Daddy," Aaliyah added. "It's your wedding. You have to dance." Soon the entire family was on the dance floor, moving to the music with varying degrees of skill but equal amounts of enthusiasm. Keisha laughed as Zion spun her around, nearly knocking her over with his enthusiasm. Caleb tried to teach Damon the proper way to do the running man, shaking his head at his father's attempts. And Aaliyah twirled in her flower girl dress until she got dizzy and had to sit down. When the music slowed to a gentle ballad, the crowd cleared the floor for the bride and groom to have their first dance as husband and wife. Damon held Keisha close, swaying to the music and marveling at how perfect this moment felt. No regrets? He whispered in her ear. Only one, she whispered back. His heart skipped a beat. What? That we waited so long to get here. We got here when we were supposed to. Everything that happened before brought us to this moment. Even the 5 years apart? Even that. Maybe especially that. It taught us what we had to lose. They danced in comfortable silence for a while, lost in each other and the music. Around them, their friends and family watched with smiles on their faces, happy to witness this love story that had finally found its way to a happy ending. Mommy? Daddy? Zion's voice broke through their romantic moment. Can we have cake now? Please? I've been very patient. The crowd laughed, and Damon and Keisha broke apart to look at their youngest son, who was standing at the edge of the dance floor with his hands clasped in front of him in his best pleading pose. Yes, Keisha said, laughing. I think it's time for cake. The cake cutting was a production worthy of a Broadway show, with all 3 children offering helpful advice about the proper way to cut cake and reminding their parents not to smash it in each other's faces. That's not nice, Aaliyah said seriously. The cake is too pretty to waste. And it probably tastes really good, Caleb added pragmatically. And I want to eat it, not wear it, Zion finished, making everyone laugh. Damon and Keisha carefully cut the first slice, feeding each other with exaggerated gentleness while their children cheered their approval. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, the Williams family found themselves alone in the fellowship hall with Nia and Marcus, helping to clean up the celebration. Best wedding ever, Marcus declared, his mouth still full of cake. It really was beautiful, Nia agreed, stacking chairs. Simple but perfect. Just like us, Keisha said, winking at Damon. Simple? He asked with mock offense. I'll have you know I'm very complicated. You're really not, Caleb said matter-of-factly. You like us, you like mommy, you like building things and watching sports. That's not complicated. Out of the mouths of babes, Nia laughed. Speaking of building things, Damon said, I have some news. Good news or bad news? Aaliyah asked suspiciously. Good news. Very good news. Remember how we talked about maybe getting a bigger house someday? Yeah? All 3 children said in unison. Well, I found the perfect house. It has a big backyard for playing, a workshop where we can build things together, and... He paused for dramatic effect. A pool. The children erupted in cheers, jumping up and down and talking over each other about all the things they would do in their new house. When can we move? Caleb wanted to know. Next month, if everything goes according to plan. Will our rooms be bigger? Aaliyah asked. Much bigger. Big enough for all your art supplies and a reading corner. Will I have my own bathroom? This from Zion, who had recently become very concerned with privacy. You'll share with your brother, but it'll be bigger than the one you have now. What about me? Keisha asked. Do I get anything special in this new house? You get a studio, Damon said, smiling at her surprised expression. A real writing studio with big windows and built-in bookshelves and space for all your projects. Damon, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. You're a published author now. You deserve a proper place to work. Published author? Nia asked. The book deal went through? Last week, Keisha said, beaming. It comes out next spring. I'm so proud of you, Nia said, hugging her sister tightly. Mama would be so proud too. She would have said I was getting too big for my britches, Keisha laughed. And then she would have bought 10 copies to give to all her friends, Nia added. As they finished cleaning up and gathered their things, Damon looked around the fellowship hall one more time. This was where it all began in a way. This church, his mother's church, where he'd learned about faith and family and forgiveness. Ready to go home? Keisha asked, slipping her hand into his. More than ready. They loaded the sleepy children into the car, with Zion falling asleep before they even left the parking lot. Aaliyah dozed against her window and Caleb fought to stay awake, determined not to miss any part of this perfect day. Today was the best day ever, he mumbled as they pulled into their driveway. I think so too, Damon agreed. Are we going to have more best days ever? Aaliyah asked sleepily. Lots of them, Keisha promised. That's what families do. They make the best days ever together. As they carried their tired children into the house and tucked them into bed, Damon thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. 5 years ago, he'd been a successful but lonely man who had no idea he was a father. Today he was surrounded by more love than he'd ever imagined possible. Later, as he and Keisha sat on their back porch in their wedding clothes, watching the stars and planning their future, he felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you, he said suddenly. For what? For giving me this. For giving me them. for giving me a family. You gave it to yourself by choosing to stay. By choosing to fight for us. We gave it to each other. And we're going to keep giving it to each other, every day for the rest of our lives. Promise? I promise. 2 months later they moved into their new house. It was everything Damon had promised and more, spacious but cozy, elegant but comfortable, with enough room for their family to grow and thrive. The children adapted quickly as children do. Caleb set up an elaborate laboratory in the garage workshop, conducting experiments that occasionally worried the neighbors. Aaliyah turned her new room into an art studio, covering every available surface with her creations. And Zion discovered that having his own space meant he could sing as loudly as he wanted without anyone telling him to use his inside voice. Keisha threw herself into her writing, working on her second book while the first one gained momentum in pre-publication reviews. She'd also started speaking at events for single mothers, sharing her story and offering hope to women who felt trapped by their circumstances. And Damon found himself busier and happier than he'd ever been. His business was thriving, partly because he'd discovered that being a father had made him a better leader and decision-maker. But more importantly, he was living the life he'd always dreamed of but never dared to hope for. One evening, as the family sat around their new dinner table sharing stories about their day, Aaliyah made an announcement. "I'm going to write a book too," she declared. "About our family." "What kind of book?" Keisha asked. "A story about a little girl whose daddy lived far away, but then he came back and they all lived happily ever after." "That's a beautiful idea, sweetheart. What are you going to call it?" Aaliyah thought for a moment. "Finding Daddy." "Perfect title," Damon said, his voice thick with emotion. "Will you help me write it?" she asked. "We'll all help you," Keisha promised. "It's our story after all." That night, after the children were asleep, Damon and Keisha lay in bed talking about the future. They'd been married for 3 months now, and every day felt like a gift. "Do you think we should have more children?" Keisha asked suddenly. "Do you want more children?" "I think I do. I think it would be beautiful to have a baby that we plan together, that we get to experience from the very beginning." "Then let's have more children." "Just like that. Just like that. How many do you want?" "I don't know. 1 more, maybe 2. Enough to fill up this big house with noise and laughter. And enough for Zion to not be the baby anymore? He'll always be our baby even if he has younger siblings." They talked about names and nursery designs and how the older children would react to having a new sibling. It was all hypothetical, but it felt real and possible and wonderful. 6 months later, their hypothetical became reality when Keisha discovered she was pregnant. This time, there were no secrets, no fear, no complicated circumstances. Just joy and excitement and the eager anticipation of a family that was already complete but somehow had room for more love. The older children were thrilled at the prospect of becoming big brothers and sister. Caleb immediately began researching everything he could about babies, approaching impending siblinghood with his usual scientific method. Aaliyah started planning all the things she would teach the baby about art and beauty. And Zion was convinced that having a baby brother or sister would be even better than getting a puppy. "Can we name the baby after Grandma?" Aaliyah asked one day as they looked at ultrasound pictures. "What if it's a boy?" Damon asked. "Then we can name him after Grandpa," she said simply. And so when their daughter was born 8 months later, they named her Rose Marie Williams, after both of her grandmothers. She was perfect and healthy and looked exactly like her siblings had as babies, a beautiful blend of both her parents. The children were immediately smitten with their baby sister, taking turns holding her and telling her stories and singing her songs. Watching them with her, Damon was reminded once again of how blessed they were. "She's the final piece," Keisha said one evening as they watched Caleb carefully read a story to baby Rose while his siblings listened attentively. "The final piece of what?" "Our family. Our puzzle. She makes us complete." "I thought we were already complete." "We were. But sometimes complete can become even more complete." Damon laughed at her logic, but he knew what she meant. Their family had room for infinite love, infinite joy, infinite possibility. As they celebrated Rose's first birthday in the backyard of their house, surrounded by friends and family and enough love to last several lifetimes, Damon thought about the conversation he'd had with his mother in her hospital room 2 years earlier. She had asked him to bring his children to meet her, and he had promised he would. He'd kept that promise even if she hadn't lived to see all of them. But somehow, looking at his 4 beautiful children playing in the sunshine while his wife laughed with her sister and friends, he felt like she was there with them. "Daddy," Caleb said, tugging on his shirt. "Come play with us." "What are we playing?" "Family," Aaliyah announced. We're playing family and everyone has to be happy. That's easy, Damon said, scooping up Zion and reaching for Rose. I'm always happy when I'm with my family. Even when we're loud and messy and argue about whose turn it is to feed the fish? Zion asked. Especially then. Even when the baby cries in the middle of the night? Caleb wanted to know. Even then. Even when I get paint on the walls? Aaliyah asked with a guilty expression. Even then. But maybe we should talk about that later. As the afternoon wore on and their guests began to leave, the Williams family found themselves alone in their backyard, watching the sunset and feeling grateful for everything they had. What are you thinking about? Keisha asked, settling beside Damon on the porch swing with Rose in her arms. I'm thinking about second chances. About how sometimes the best things come from the worst situations. About how lucky we are. We're not lucky, she said. We're blessed. What's the difference? Luck is random. Blessings are earned through love and faith and never giving up on each other. Around them, their children played in the growing twilight, their laughter mixing with the evening sounds of their neighborhood. This was home. This was family. This was everything. I love you, Damon said, kissing his wife's forehead and stroking his baby daughter's cheek. I love you too. All of you. Forever and always. Promise. Promise. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the Williams family sat together on their porch, complete and whole and perfectly, beautifully happy.